We kickstart our conversation this morning with a woman who is widely celebrated by many Ghanaians. She's a lawyer. She's also spokesperson for former President John Dramani Mahama. She's my guest this morning as we engage on myriad issues, manifold issues of national scope. Madam Joyce Bawah Mokhtari is my guest. Thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning.
Thank you, sir. Very good morning to you.
The sir is very formal. You know my name. I like this. I like this to be very informal, so that when I jab you,
I don't know which of your names you want to use.
Benjamin. Ben is fine.
Okay,
Ben is fine.
Okay, but Ben is not Benjamin. Benjamin sounds much nicer than Ben. But hey.
Okay. Whichever way.
Sir.
But let's get right down to it. The former president has been on tour. Where is he now? Wale Wale?
Well, he's actually headed out for Wale Wale by Tamale. There's a fundraising in the Northeast region, so he'll be joining the party executives and many other Ghanaians who will be joining them this evening for that fundraising event.
I see. What's the campaign been like so far on the campaign trail, especially in the northern belt of the country where you know the dynamics? For the first time, two contenders, heavyweights from the NDC and the MPP, both of northern extraction. What has the reception been like?
Well, Benjamin, you do know that John Mahama enjoys enormous support from many people here in Ghana, I mean, irrespective of where he hails from. I find that JM is a very cosmopolitan kind of gentleman. You know, he reflects Nkrumah's idea of what Ghana should actually look like. You know what I mean? He's from northern region, from Bole. His wife is from the Bunuahafo region. His half-brothers come from partly the Volta region and many other regions of Ghana. Right. He speaks many languages. So I think that, you know, JM, unlike most of our leaders, really occupies a very, very beautiful place in our history. And I think that the northern region does not necessarily lose sight of that fact. But yes, we are all Ghanaians, and I want us to focus more on the fact that we're all citizens. And it is actually very insightful and interesting. It also speaks to the evolution of our history, that for the very first time in the history of this country, we have two very illustrious sons of Ghana, both hailing from the northern region, in particular, one from the newly created Northeast region and the other from the Savannah region, who are both going to be contenders for this very coveted position to lead this country. So yes, I look forward to it. I would have wished and hoped that we would actually elevate the conversation and focus on the issues. But I believe strongly that John Mahama stands very, very tall. He stands tall in terms of his vision for this country, in terms of relatively his experience to lead this country. He also actually represents, you know, the future that all of us are looking forward to. And I'm looking forward to him successfully prosecuting this campaign and winning the election come December 7th.
I'll go back to the northern belt, but you just said something about elevating the conversation and speaking to the issues. What exactly did you mean?
Well, you see, look, I have always been one who believes in us running a very, very decorous campaign. I look forward. I mean, I watched what happened in the US, for example, over the last few weeks. Even Donald Trump has not been able to come up with anything significant to say about Joe Biden. He speaks to a certain
calls him Sleepy Joe. He says he's wobbling. He's not. Now Joe Biden has stepped aside.
And look at the way the empathy that his dropping out has actually generated. People are speaking about his patriotism, his love for country. You know, let me state categorically.
Some also say it's pretty late. It's
well, I don't.
Too little, too late for him to do that.
I disagree. I live with my mom who's 84. I understand the exigency of what age can do to any individual, irrespective of your intentions. So I don't want to belabor the point. And that is only what will happen to all of us if we live that long. It is something that we actually should empathize with. And I think that looking at this conversation, it actually even makes it even more poignant, the sort of life that all of us want to lead. And I think the most historic thing is about people referring to his patriotism, that this is a gift, something he's done because he believes that he's also frail now through no fault of his. But above all, he's looking to the future and hoping that someone else will take the mantle from where he's actually living off. And that is the beauty of democracy. And this is coming from God's own country. So I think that there's a lot of lessons we can all take from what has happened. We can also look forward to our own example and what we intend to leave for the generations yet unborn. And so I have always been for the fact that we should elevate the conversation. Look, I've been watching the campaign as we've progressed. I've looked at Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, who is John Mahama's running mate. I've looked at John Mahama himself, and I've come to realize that when we look at the conversations as we go along, as we progress, there are some things that us foot soldiers can say, and we can get away with it because the platforms for us are probably not as high. The demand on us not as high as our bosses. But when it comes to the individuals who lead these political parties, and a few days ago I had dinner with the British High Commissioner, and she was very interested in what we will do in the aftermath of the election, which of the leaders will have enormous control over their followers and how we can instill discipline, watch raising the temperature in particular. And look, I believe that history will probably be kinder to the leaders who looked back on the legacy that they wanted to leave, on the message they wanted to contribute to our history. Above all, look at the level of peace that they also leave behind or that they actually inherit. And I think that I want to see our leaders speak more about what they intend to do and how they intend to do it. I want us to focus more on the things that matter. Look, Benjamin, I woke up this morning, and this is just to digress a little bit, to see the levels of corruption, the dissipation of properties that we would all inherit and leave behind, bungalows that all of us would occupy at one point or the other and leave behind for the next generation. I watch how people older than we are, occupying very, 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 very high positions, privileged positions, continue to want to benefit from state assets.
What specifically are you referring to?
I woke up to stories that I, Joyce Bawah, had purchased a Toyota Avensis. You know, please, I'm sure that my family would want to see me also in one of these coveted positions and places and spaces. You understand? I would want to live right next door to the court premises, to the Institute of Parliament, and many of these very, high-end properties that people are literally taking and sharing to themselves. We live in a country where a party executive, an esteemed lawyer, actually defended his young son's record as being able to afford 200 million to buy properties from the state of Ghana.
Are you talking of the former chairman of the NPP?
Absolutely, and we had him.
Freddie Play.
My senior at the bar, a man that we all used to look up to because he had these very interesting credentials in terms of our democracy.
But I do recall when he made mention of that, there was some sort of consortium, there was a South African group, there was a team of banks. You don't do those things on your own. So it's not to say that his son had $200 million sitting there.
That was his son. And we also
used for that bit.
We know the premises that he already occupies, literally. And so look, if all that I was able to get as part of my conditions of service was to purchase a miserable little Toyota Avensis, I shudder to think.
Is that true, though?
Why not? It is the conditions of service. When we're leaving office, these were small vehicles that we had used for literally 5-6 years. And go back and check. I left the Ministry of Transport as a head of legal. In my former office, I had a similar vehicle. And so when I came into office, even as the deputy minister, the same vehicle was allocated to me. And when we speak about state capture, we're not talking about things that are lawfully allowed. And I remember the day Felix Ofosu-Kwakye walked in and said, oh, they've paid us this ex gratia, Joyce. It won't even help me pay my rent. This is something we must end. And this is a fact. You understand? So I think that the conversation right now is first and foremost, and Samahama says one thing, that for his appointees in particular, we should not expect any ex gratia.
I'll come to that shortly. Let me just, I want to streamline the conversation. Let me just take you back a little bit. In terms of age, yes, we've seen what has happened with Joe Biden. And of course, no disrespect to him at all. He's a fine gentleman and has done his bit. But even Trump is also approaching that line. If you look at the trend in the West and even the East and Africa, like Mo Ibrahim said at a point, where are all these old people taking Africa to the grave? Don't you think we need to have a paradigm shift, not ageism, but in terms of age dynamics in our politics? What's your take?
You don't look. In history, democracies evolve. I'm sure you remember a time when we had Mobutu and others. We had people like Nelson Mandela and others. In Ghana, we had relatively younger leaders even at the time. Jerry Rawlings, when he took that power at the time, how old was he? He was barely even 40 years old. So there's also a history to these things. And you know, you look at the exigency of the day. Presently, you can see there's enormous anxiety, there's a lot of stress. That will also generate this kind of leadership. And I think that is the beauty about democracy. But yes, if you have a leader who is frail, on whose side age is not, and who believes that, yes, I may be legitimately, elected, but there's really no need because I'm not strong enough or on grounds of ill health, etc. Why ever not? At that position, what we need then is to offer them enormous sympathy and empathy and help them make the transition. I think that, look, Ghana has had all sorts. And I think that we've had a fantastic history since the inception of the Fourth Republic. And we ought to be proud of this history. And I think that in other countries, they wish every day that they were actually like us. Look, how old is Mr. Mahama? He's just about 66. President Akufo-Addo currently is about 80 years and a little bit more. Exactly. President NHIA is 73. You understand? Our Speaker of Parliament, I think, is about the same age as John Mahama. And then
other countries in the West, the democracies we see
exactly
appointing 30-something-year-olds. Absolutely. Even look at Senegal, the example of Senegal.
Great. And look at even the example of the UK recently, if you know what I mean. I mean, in France, we've had Macron. In Australia, we've had someone even much, much younger. So I think that, look, every society will determine who its leadership should be. But look at the floor of Parliament. We have the Honorable Akufo-Addo, we have the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, and then we have Fenya Markin on the other side. You understand? So there's actually a mixed bag. Look at the level of the ages in average of our members of Parliament, for example. Relatively young and very strong and positive individuals all around. So I think that we shouldn't beat ourselves too much. I think that in terms of our democracy and our credentials, Ghana still occupies a much enviable position than many of the other countries around us.
Two quick issues. I did promise, and I try not to forget, that I would take you back up north. So 2 quick questions. One, the first being that the MPP has also been clawing away some votes in the northern belt of the country. Now, about what, 5 regions? Yeah. Or is it?
Yeah. Yes, now 5 regions.
About 5 regions or 6. How is the NDC reacting to that? And when you're done, just so I don't forget, the issue about ex gratia. The former President John Dramani Mahama has said he would put in place measures to scrap it. I mean, this bit you mentioned about a Toyota Avensis and all of that feeds into that rhetoric. What's the plan? How will it be done? And I'm asking those questions because sometimes promises are made and they are never fulfilled. 2 quick questions for you.
Well, look, I think that we've made great inroads in the northern regions of Ghana, or the former northern regions of Ghana. And I'm sure you do know that, look, in 2020, there's a very interesting historic event that occurred. We went out of office after losing by almost 1 million votes. We returned to be at par with the ruling government in parliament. For the first time, Ghana delivered a hung parliament. That must tell you something. Why do you think the President Akufo-Addo continues to make all these appointments that he's making? I mean, the reason is simple, because they can see that the inroads in the northern parts of Ghana are strongly in the house of the National Democratic Congress. Look, whether you like it or not, the most attractive political party in Ghana today is the National Democratic Congress. We've won just as many elections. We've run just as many campaigns. We have one of the most diverse executives that you can possibly think of. Sphere, all sorts of ages, spanning all tribes and religious faiths, name it. If you want a truly representative party in Ghana today, make no mistake, the MPP is simply trying to emulate the great example of the NDC. And so when you look at the northern region today, look, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is being awarded a position in government because they must beat people within the northern region. I mean, take the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, take the Honorable Mutala, the Honorable Suhini. I mean, look at them, fantastic young men, great inspirations to all of us. So we have a great example that we're going. Dr. Damba is struggling now to win in one of the seats. We have many of these examples going on around. And I think in the Upper East region, I'm sure you know that we won almost all the seats that we have available. We have the Honorable Ayaraga, Ayine, and all the Dongo, fantastic guys.
You've struggled in other regions.
We have, every political party has regions where they struggle.
I mean, in the northern belt, you've struggled in other regions.
I don't think that I'll call it a struggle. I'll call it that there is suddenly a certain new angle to it. Don't forget that we have
what angle?
Sons.
Initially, when it was just, 3-4 regions, you would widely sweep the northern belt of the country, even starting from Rollins.
Do you want us to go into this conversation? We could. Say, look, we don't want to discuss the very partisan way in which some of these regional things were done. You know, look, Osajifo Dr. Kwame
Are you suggesting some gerrymandering?
Oh, there's definitely a lot of gaslighting, a lot of gerrymandering. That's of course. Look, let me tell you something. I've said it before that all that the New Patriotic Party is trying to do is to emulate the great example of the NDC. Every school of thought knows that. Every student of politics must be conscious of this fact. Why? There are larger regions population-wise, heavier regions population-wise. Why are they not demarcating those regions? I know you are
thinking Ashanti region.
Well, certainly. You understand. And then they go and pick up a running mate and then try to create the impression that one region can make them remain in power, can help them break the eight, a two-region strategy. Look, Ghanaians are not to be taken for a ride, my brother. Not on any day.
I see.
Look at the attempts that have been made to run the NDC down on every facet that you can think of. Day in, day out, we get more validation. We are even determined as more credible. We continue to occupy the voice of reason that every Ghanaian wants. That's what I'm saying. You wake up in the morning, you have stolen as much as 339 million cedis and put in the National Cathedral with nothing to show. Then you talk about Joyce Bawah buying an advances. When I arrived as a deputy minister, I was leaving my work as a head of legal, a director for legal and estates of one of Ghana's Club 100 companies. So whether you sell an advances to me or not, how does that compare? My family will want to see me occupy lands near Labadi Beach.
All right.
They want to see me occupy
this bit about ex gratia and scrapping it. Are you for it? I mean, are you really, as a party, the former president, is he telling us the truth?
Look, let me tell you that, funny enough, before this particular conversation began, there was a roundtable discussion. May my father rest in peace. May his soul rest in peace. The Honorable Asedin Ketia was in that meeting. He educated all of us on the work of the National Assembly that led to the drafting of the 1992 Constitution. He explained the rationale or the raison d'etre for which that clause on Article 71 office holders was put in. The question is simply this, Benjamin. At the time, how many judges did we have? How many members occupied this unique club of Article 71 persons? It was a very small group. In any case, on all the key economic and financial indicators, Ghana was doing better. Today, we have at least 34 million people in this country. How can you continue to have a small club? Don't forget the work of the Constitutional Amendment Review Committee going around the country. If you observe, the largest referendum came from Article 71. Every Ghanaian wanted something done about that particular clause. Okay,
so just to ensure that we encapsulate this very briefly, how are you going to do that? You will need constitutional reforms.
Charity begins from home. So first and foremost, once you accept an appointment in my administration, you know that you are not receiving ex gratia. First and foremost. So take it that we are going to have 60 government ministers. That's the first rule of thumb. The rest of it will require some parliamentary conversations. It will require engagement with the other sections of them.
And you will get a pushback from there.
Don't worry.
Because the other side, whether majority or minority,
I can bet you that
you can't coerce them into accepting
when the framers of the 1992 Constitution went for all the members of the Assembly, the market women and all of that, what did we say? Ghanaians protested. Members of the then UP tradition protested that they were taking farmers and market women to go and determine what goes into a constitution. It has given us the most stable period in our history as a people. You can't fault the 1992 Constitution because it was by the people and for the people. But now the people determine that it is time for us to make amends, that there is too much power vested in the executive, that Article 71 office holders do not own Ghana, that there must be some amendments to that clause as well. There will definitely be some pushback, but I have no doubt that every well-meaning Ghanaian knows that the circumstances of our history have also changed and that there is a need for some amendments to be made, and they must be far-reaching.
An interesting point is that some of you, there are members of parliament who have benefited 3-4 times.
In fact, even 5 times.
5 times.
Yes.
Mean, they've been there time and again. Absolutely. These are people who, pardon my language, have grown fat.
Thank you. So we can ask a question.
On the largesse
to
of
put
the
it,
state.
To put it better.
Okay. So now, for these same people, sometimes, to come back and say, oh, let's scrap it, it comes a bit... it comes across as a bit hypocritical. But all well and good. Better start from somewhere.
No. I totally.
But the point,
I totally.
Look,
Let me.
How long if a John Dramani Mahama becomes president again, how long will it take him to institutionalize this? We need to look at this in a framework before you say something and then 7 years on or 4 years you are now trying to execute it.
Benjamin, let me say something, right? You see, look, for the very first time, I love the fact that all of us, with whatever policies we put out there, we are being put to strict proof. It is a fantastic exercise that at this time, Ghanaians have realized that all these highfalutin promises mean absolutely nothing if there is no clear commitment. So I think that it is important that we establish that we are clearly committed to the work of the Constitutional Amendment Committee. We are committed to reviewing the Constitution. We are committed to ensuring that Parliament will come along, that the judiciary will come along. But what we expect is that the media will help us in the advocacy, will help us in the education, and will actually lead the conversations in the run-up to this particular issue. And secondly, it will start from his own appointments. And look, let me be honest with you. There are some government appointees, ministers, deputies, chief executives, who don't live in public accommodation, you understand?
All right.
You get me? They get given the option, but they decline. He has also mentioned things to do with utilities, for example. Don't forget that there's a lot that is accorded persons within this Article 71 environment. And watch what happened recently when that LI came from my former ministry, for example, the Road Transport Ministry, regarding sirens for a certain select group, still members of that same Article 71. Don't you see how embarrassed they were? You see, our democracy has also...
members of Parliament from your end, and I gave them a flagellation.
Thank you.
Had supported
and I love the fact that the Honourable...
it was so disrespectful.
The Honourable Aite took full responsibility. Don't you see the beauty of democracy? People know when the society is shaming them, that when times are so tough, look, when you go to other jurisdictions where they have huge and serious transport congestion, I remember I left a policy document that was handed down by my colleagues in South Africa at the time about traffic management systems, where you have a system put in place, automated, that determines, and at some point you hear announcements on public systems telling you, look, this road is congested, use this other side, or you reduce the number of vehicles on one side and put the traffic on the other. We need to start having elevated conversations. Look, artificial intelligence is being used in the US to manage traffic better. The train systems across the world are using and employing similar technology. Did you see what happened a few days ago when there was a total blackout? Because technology had done what? Had failed. We haven't even gotten there. So today when you wake up in the morning, they say, oh, the internet is down. Traffic is the same. It makes no difference. But at least if we employ a better use, instead of using artificial intelligence for just fake news and propaganda and maligning other people, why not? When your people, Ghanaians, accuse you and criticize you for state capture and corruption and all these scandals, you wake up in the morning and tell us that, oh, someone bought an Avensis. I mean, seriously.
I think we've gone past the Avensis bit. But let's look at the promises. In every campaign, political campaign, promises will be made. But I see a certain trend, and some people from MPP, NDC are making wild promises. Is the NDC not falling into the same trap the NPP fell in the 2016 election? Myriad promises, and this has led to the neck of the current administration being in the noose by ordinary Ghanaians. I mean, I remember the last interaction at Kempinski with the former president. I asked him about TOR and a number of issues, and he made some promises. He made some promises on sports. I'll get to some of them. And he even said, look, in my future administration, if you give me the nod, people will not come and amass wealth. I will not make it possible. I do remember that the current president said something similar. If you think you're coming here to, secure wealth for yourself, and look at where we are today. So the question is the MDC not over-promising with some of what it's saying? And are you not afraid that if you fail, if you get the nod and you fail, Ghanaians will deal with you even worse than ever before?
I think the Ghanaians have always dealt with the NDC even worse than they've done with the MPP. That's not in doubt. I believe strongly that today, if this government were an NDC administration, Benjamin, the system would have collapsed completely, entirely, even under weight alone of the corruption scandals that we have, all the allegations that have gone uninvestigated, all the allegations that the president himself has sought to clear, all the impressions that the president has sought to give and has failed even to deliver. Look, I think that Mr. Mahama and the NDC are actually being very cautious. And I love the fact that, as I said, right now people will ask you, give us time. How much is this going to cost? What do you think this is going to do? How do you think this will work out? There must be a good reason. Remember, we even made very partisan the issues of foreign exchange differentials. And people bought into it. They set up a whole foreign exchange committee of parliament and invited Mr. Franklin Kujo to be a part of it. What happened? Today we have the Bank of Ghana admitting to losses well over 50 billion Ghana cedis, and yet they are constructing a head office for 250 million. You see,
you know those processes were triggered long before some of the meltdown
my brother, they
were facing.
Remember that sometimes they
would you rather they left it to rot like maybe we've done with the National Cathedral? Would you rather we incurred judgment debts? Would you rather
we are still incurring judgment debts. When was the last time you heard anybody in the New Patriotic Party speak about judgment debts? Have you ever asked how much it costs for government to travel and visit all these arbitration courts? I used to work in arbitration in huge international courts. I know the cost of even lawyers that you engage to represent the country. And don't forget, there was a time when judgment debts became a huge political tool. What has changed? You see, look, I think that...
Well, the cost of that and winning, at least, we've won quite a number of battles.
Well, I'm sure that every government has won
much more than every government,
and I'm sure you know that the NDC was toasted largely for going to UNCLOS and winning on the day because there were very critical issues at hand, huge sums of money at stake. In any case, how much credit have we been given? Look, Benjamin, I am telling you one thing that I know, that on any level, and you can start even vetting these conversations, John Mahama has his pulse on what is important to the citizen of Ghana. He understands this country, and I keep saying, for all the falsehoods, the propaganda, show me one thing that Mr. Akufo-Addo has been able to prove against John Mahama. And you see, politics is a human institution. If you even raise the bar, even on corruption and how both leaders handle corruption, that should tell you something. Ghana Integrity Initiative, they beat the NDC the whole time we're in office. Today, even they have thrown up their arms in the air, saying that they have lost control and that any attempt to fight corruption is now zero. The African peer review mechanism, the Afrobarometer. Look, it is not because I am Joyce that I'm saying, and that's why I keep coming back to the ridiculous impression about the sorts of things they want. Look, let's stop majoring on minors and focus on the things that make a difference. Most of our rural people are poorer now. That is from the Ghana Statistical Service. On the number of persons who are declared underemployed, the majority of them are women. And note that women drive this economy and drive this country. All of us say, can attest.
1.9 million,
absolutely,
about 1.2 million
absolutely, are women. And so when we wake up in the morning, people are interested not in the highfalutin conversations, my brother. Can you ever ask yourself, PDS, they spent $12 million, a compact that was negotiated by John Mahama and Professor John Ebanzaka Mills, to benefit the energy sector through family and nepotistic debates. So you see, that's what I'm saying. Maybe a certain ajapa should have happened for me too when I was in office. Then we would not be majoring in these unnecessary conversations that we are having. Look, I was never treated differently from any other appointee, even till date. And I always tell people that I was a member of the NDC even long before Mr. Mahama even decided to run for vice president, let alone for president. My father was in the NDC. So it is not as if your politics is determined largely because you are close to John Dramani Mahama. He's been a great example to all of us young people.
I get
there
the point.
Is something you haven't observed
let's
about
not digress.
the NDC.
I just want you to address for me, is the NDC not over-promising?
And
we've seen that is a deadly trial. It's devastating. It's a landmine.
We are even being cautious. Look, I have told Mr. Mahama that if we wake up in the morning and all we do is have a president walk around our most poor, ask them what it is they need today, how do they want to be served? Imagine that we reduce the amount of government expenditure alone over the years since Akufo-Addo has been in office. Go and check. Huge sums of money. Office of Government Machinery. Mind-boggling amounts. Do you know the biggest challenge now for students on our campuses Accommodation. There are people outside and working who pay less than the students on campus. If I show you my phone today, you'll be amazed. 11,000, 10,000, 7,000. Can you imagine that if SNIT stopped spending money on transaction advisory services and spend that amount of money building student hostels like they used to do? Those are safe investments. Students will pay a lot less. And of course, pensioners will receive their investments and receive them in measured terms.
So now you're talking about SNIT's investments and some of the problems we've seen.
Absolutely. And we saw a former Chief Justice of Ghana who actually sat with these pensioners.
Right.
You understand? Absolutely. Look, there are still some amazing individuals in Ghana. And I think that, look, Mr. Mahama is being very measured. Have you heard him on any day wake up and start singing this? Why? Dr. Bawumia is campaigning. What has changed? The teachers are still suffering. The nurses are still suffering. Students are still suffering. The foreign exchange that he campaigned on, look where it is today. The Bank of Ghana that he continues to defend has lost 50 billion. Can you imagine how much that can invest in tertiary education for our students? If we invested that in accommodation for students, can you imagine what that would look like? So look, let me say...
With all this being true, though, and I hope I'm not truncating your line of thought, but with all this being true, since you've brought that up, I would have reserved that for later. Why does the NDC not want to engage the MPP's candidate, John Dramani Mahama? Why does he not want to face off with Dr. Bawumia? I mean, if it's this juicy, if it's this good, if you have all these points in your favor, inflation, the exchange rate, the economy generally, the central bank, I could go on and on.
The biggest one is corruption. Prices. And how that has denied our poor.
I mean, why don't you want to debate the vice president?
You see,
what are you running away from? Why are you afraid?
You know, issues to do with political debates amongst our leaders are largely conventions that have developed as our democracy has grown.
Okay.
And in the past, when these debates were called for, nobody had any issues with them. In 2016, a new example was set once more by Akufo-Addo, then candidate Akufo-Addo, who declined an invitation to debate. Nobody beat him up for it. In 2020, he declined an invitation to debate. Nobody beat him up for it. The fact that John Mahama today is the opposition leader doesn't change the fact that Akufo-Addo refused to debate on 2 occasions. In any case...
But this is not Akufo-Addo.
As I said, this is a convention. And when you look on all the key indicators, genuinely, what are we going to be debating on? That they haven't destroyed our economy? That Ghana is not bankrupt? That they haven't borrowed 620 billion and counting and nothing to show, and that they even awarded contracts to do with COVID, stealing from sick people, and that so far there's been no justification for the award of those contracts to those persons. Today we are still paying a COVID levy. What are we going to be debating? And look, let me tell you one thing. Where is Dr. Bawumia today on all the things that he said? May he so rest in peace. Parkway Mr. Arthur told us that this was a textbook economist. How many people bought into that? He asked him to answer 170 questions. Excuse my French, very foolish questions at the time. Everything is worse now. At the time, the dollar was 4 cedis. How much was a gallon of fuel then? How much was transportation then? Look, I am not sitting here because I'm an ambassador for the NDC or spokesperson for the Mahama 2024 campaign. I am a Ghanaian citizen like everybody else. Of course, I'm not one of those whose fathers amassed enormous amounts of wealth to leave to his children so that we'll never be poor again. I work very hard. I have 4 children. I have a family. I have an 84-year-old mother whose pension cannot even pay for her medications. This is the reality that we're talking about. The National Health Insurance. Go to Kolebu and see.
We'll get there.
And yet go to the offices.
We're about to go to health shortly. Is this, though, not some sort of political tit-for-tat? I mean, I engaged Dr. Akufo-Addo Kennedy, who said that usually the one pushing for a debate of this nature is the one who needs it the most. You realize that in the US, even though Joe Biden went for it, I mean, it turned out badly. But he says the one who goes for it is the one who needs it the most, and he feels Bawumia is in a weaker position, which is why he wants this. Dr. Arthur Kennedy has said so. But is it political tit-for-tat that Bawumia, in the last election and even before, had suggested, oh, if the NDC wants a debate, they should go and debate the NHIA. They should go and debate the nurses with their allowances. They should go and debate. Is that part of why you are doing this? I mean, in the past, so he should also go and do this?
Benjamin,
I've heard some of your party people say, that's why I want to find out from
you. See, let me be very, very honest with you. You know, look, I don't want to belabor this point, you understand. I think that Dr. Bawumia owes us a lot more than on any debate day. I think that for now, he should be telling us on all the key promises that he made. In fact, Akufo-Addo picked him, a non-card-bearing member of the NPP, non-political actor, largely because he felt that he had the competence to come and deal with the economy.
The economic wasting.
Absolutely. And I remember, and I always say, one of my most lasting memories of the 2016 campaign and how low it had sunk was the fact that Samira then was able to stand on political platforms, on radio stations, and chastise John Dramani Mahama. And nobody took her on for that. Please, if I said same things about Samira today, what would you say? So
I don't think it is fair to say nobody said anything about that.
My brother, find me a headline that you took her on, even in recent times, that you've demanded. Look, John Mahama and his wife have been model citizens. You will never hear the former First Lady even talking about anybody's issues. She is supportive of her husband, of his politics, and she's a very amazing social entrepreneur, focuses on that. John Mahama himself, look at his trajectory. Just look at it. In all that you've ever known till date, you know, look, except for some of these idiomatic expressions and these little proverbs that have, you know, have somehow, as Lord Mensa says, let's avoid using them because sometimes they are subject to misinterpretation and people will not look at the context and all. Yes, exactly. And I mean, even with that good, what was the reason? The man had been so beaten. Exactly. Well, I still hear them. And look, in recent times,
it's done its work, so I don't think
Benjamin,
we need to go there.
We must put our leaders to strict proof. Let's demand fairness. I just ask for leverage. Listen to Dr. Bawumia even talking about a 24-hour economy. Why? Why would anybody be so desperate for power? What we want is that for the promises he made over the years, how has he fared on corruption, on state capture, on poverty, on the economy? Look at the wastage. Look at the wastage. Look at this PDS issue. Look at the matter to do with the National Cathedral, 339 million. Can you imagine what that would mean? Imagine that you even divided that 339 million and gave it to our rural poor. Gave it to these women who don't have any jobs. Look, one of the biggest challenges we face is the threat of unemployment, which has been growing exponentially since. Our largest demographic is now youth. By the time I became a deputy minister, I told you, I was already a head of legal. Imagine those who came after us, who for 10 years out of school have never been able to secure decent employment. And yet you have government officials opulently feeding fat on the taxpayers' money. These are the things you should ask Dr. Bawumia.
Let's look at health. It's one of the areas where some promises have been made by the John Mahama campaign. If you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, 30 years from around 2000. We're 6 years away, and we've not achieved even up to 50% over the period, over 2 decades. We've not achieved even up to 50% in terms of universal health coverage. And there are other issues I'll get in, because recently we had that pensions, health conversation, and my colleague Evans Mensah with his guests delved into some of these issues. What will John Dramani Mahama do when it comes to health?
You know, look, if there's one thing that everybody in Ghana credits John Mahama for, is his attention to our infrastructure, especially our health infrastructure, across the country. Even as an intervention to major regional hospitals, he also focused on the Project CHIPS compounds to ensure that every small community actually has a health service center. There must be a good reason. And I told Mr. Mahama a few weeks ago, Benjamin, if we lift Kolebu alone to the level of the University of Ghana Medical Center, I think that we can replicate same across the country. A gentleman said to me once, you know that even finding training opportunities for students in a place like the Tamale Teaching Hospital is a challenge. That is another market that we need to fulfill. If you look at the Ashanti region, why would Otumfo invite his citizens and Ghanaians to help him renovate the Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital? When that other hospital was being constructed, if Akufo-Addo had continued from then, maybe that one too would have come on stream to support the people who live in that catchment area. Remember that the whole of the Ashanti region serves the northernmost parts of our country, and even some people from other parts of this country. When he was given the nod to lead us as president, what did he do? Even in the course of the pandemic, they promised we're going to build 111 hospitals. Why don't you complete the ones that are mid-sentence, near completion, almost done? Look at the Dodua hospital. Look at when you go there in the morning, you'll be amazed at the numbers that are there, because the facility is basic, is usable, it is up to standard. It is one facility that actually serves the whole of that catchment area, irrespective of whom you are. Look, health statuses do not discriminate between the MPP and the NDC. I have doctor colleagues of mine. My own sister tells me, Sister Joyce, you know, the one thing that bothers me is that even when you're a medical doctor, in an emergency, you struggle for emergency attention.
Even as medical doctors?
Even as go and ask. Open your phone lines.
But I thought there were structures in place, because I've been to 37 at a point before where I know military officers, ex-military officers are treated a certain way.
They are completely inundated. Sometimes they don't even have bed facilities for these people who need them most.
How long ago are you talking about?
Why you think the no bed syndrome has ended?
I'm not saying it has. I'm just asking for confirmation. How long ago are you talking about?
I said go and check. Look, in terms of health, I can give you many examples and names of doctors who, when they've had an emergency, have struggled to find access. Look at the ambulance service. If Mr. Akufo-Addo and the other gentlemen are being prosecuted for these ambulances, what do you make of the story today about the amount that
has put out?
These are allegations. But look at the quantums of sums of money. That amount of money can raise the level of Kolebu.
Of course, yet to be substantiated.
Absolutely, and improve their facilities. You understand? Look, I would say one thing. We need additional emergency health facilities more than anything. Recently, a relative of mine almost died through a road crash. The UGMC had amazing facilities. Even a visiting doctor commended the facilities in that hospital. But look at the effort that was made because of partisanship to even open that hospital for use. But for the pandemic, you know, look, government is also a continuum. I think we should also demand, and I like the fact that Mr. Mahama has clearly stated that there is no point going to restart or reinvent the wheel. That all the projects, school blocks, dormitory facilities, hospital facilities that have been left to rot, he will work very hard to ensure that we complete those projects.
All right, and that's a good thing. I have a quick question for you, though. I mean, I remember the Bank Hospital. I had to personally put up stories, do certain things before. We've been through the mill on some of them. But the UGMC, is it former President Mahama, really, who initiated that project or delivered what we see? The NDC has often touted it as his project, and some members of the MPP say, actually, that is not true, that it's an Atta Mills project. What is the reality of that?
We keep nitpicking. I mean, that's what it is. You know, may his soul rest in peace. And this week is always a very solemn week for us in the NDC because it was his 80th, or it would have been his 80th birthday yesterday. In a few days, there will be a wreath-laying ceremony. There was an amazing lecture delivered by the Venerable Mr. Kwesi Pratt, and you heard him extol the virtues of Professor John Evans Atta Mills. I am sure that wherever Professor Mills is today, he will be enormously proud that his vice president, who succeeded him on his demise, actually saw to the completion of that project at the heart of a campus where he led most of his adult life. And nothing beats it. And like I said, that UGMC facility will not serve just MPP or NDC. It serves Ghanaians.
But just answer for me. Is it right if people say it was not
I say we are nitpicking.
A John Mahama
We are project. Nitpicking, and I don't want us to do that. John Mahama saw the completion. He commissioned it for use. Okay. His boss started it. He was his vice president. If today you are touting somebody who has failed to fix the economy for having, 22 achievements to his name, and so for that matter is well qualified to lead this country in his boss's stead, then of course you must applaud John Mahama.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Now, in that health conversation, dialogue that was held, that we held, you would realize that Dr. Ernest York, Vice President of the Ghana Medical Association, talks about removing the capping connected to funding for the NHIA or the NHIS. He says the capped amount is huge and that even the uncapped amount does not come in time, and that they have approached you, the political parties, for firm commitment on that. He also makes mention of the fact that they want the NHIA decoupled from the NHIS. It's like he said, regulator, actor, orchestrator, everything in one. What will a future John Dramani Mahama administration do as far as this is concerned?
Look, health is life, okay? Anything that removes bottlenecks. And I remember, and I love the fact that Dr. York referred to it. This was one of the promises that then candidate Akufo-Addo made.
That what?
That he was going to allow the health institutions and facilities to manage themselves. If you remember, the Cardiothoracic Center, for example, actually said to generate their own internal revenue and use it to run the place. And they've been doing that beautifully. Look, I would say one thing, okay, that I will expect that if the one legacy Mr. Mahama completes when he comes into office, God willing, will be to improve upon our health facilities across the country. Each region deserves a regional hospital with great facilities. Look, when you go to the bank hospital... But is this current
administration not already executing that with Agenda 111?
You see, where is it? You go to Jokuku, where they pulled down a hospital that was
Some of them are different levels, different stages.
You know that completion. I have traveled the length and breadth of this country.
Have you seen nothing? Is that what you're saying?
I have seen them at different stages of completion.
Indeed. So some things are
My brother, between today and December 7th, I don't see how they are going to complete those 111 hospitals. But I know we are still paying the COVID
But if
levy.
they complete some, even if it's 10,
you see, unlike them,
there's something, right?
Unlike them, I keep saying, I don't want to major or minus. Government is a continuum. Osajifo left us the motorway, left us the Tema Industrial Enclave, left us the Port Authority in Takrady and in Tema, left us the PSC Tema Shipyard, left us Akosombo Dam, for example. You understand? This is what a nation whose history is rich. This is how we build our country and how we build our democracy. Like I said, the infrastructure that John Mahama left behind, the infrastructure that Professor Mills left behind. Have you seen the legal faculty in Legon, for example? It was a matter on Professor Mills's heart. Look at the e-justice project, for example. It was a matter. We were all young lawyers before. I mean, you struggle even to share information in court. Today, how many people do you see who queue? In fact, the law clerk is no longer even fashionable, you understand. If you were just going to be a clerk just to deliver court processes, then you'll probably be out of a job, you understand. So now you have court clerks who are paralegals, who do a lot more, who are notaries public, who do more than just delivering court processes. Because today, I can sit in court and ask the clerk to just airdrop something to me and they do it immediately. As you're speaking, as you're taking your evidence, everything is being fully automated. We even have cases now being heard fully in the public glare. Benjamin, there is a lot of good that the National Democratic Congress has done for Ghana. There's a lot of good that the leaders of the National Democratic Congress have done for Ghana. And we don't tell lies. We are not bragging. We are not browbeating everybody. We are not disrespecting the good people of Ghana. We are not telling stories that are false.
Okay.
The best part is that even on media freedoms, John Mahama stands tall.
All right. Just hold for me right there. We're going to take a bit of a breather, and we'll be back in a bit. We're still engaging spokesperson for the John Dramani Mahama campaign, Joyce Bawah Slams. We'll be back shortly. I can hear you. Welcome back on the AM show. We're still here with lawyer and spokesperson for former President John Dramani Mahama. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for waiting as we took that break. And we're back in the studio. Now, we're talking health, and I just want to cap it off on this front. In that health conversation, Joyce Bawah Slams, we heard from the College of Nurses and Midwifery, and they are saying, just as has been done for the physicians and surgeons, they also need an outfit, a center, so that they can also train their nurses and midwives, especially those who would be specializing in certain areas. You also know that we've lost some of our specialists who have traveled to other countries. Then there was Dr. Kwame Sapong-Asiedu, a CDD fellow, saying that, in fact, government, per the law, has been circumventing the law, bending the law by capping the funds that are meant for the NHIA. In other words, this money should be considered a loan, which has to be paid back. Is that a stance supported by the NDC? And if you came to power, would you support giving such money back to the authority?
I would state two things very quickly. That it is very important that we recognize that the NDC is actually a social democratic party, and that for the NDC, health is a big part of our manifestos, because you know that we've always preserved these positions in health in particular for non-partisan conversations. And until our opponents made issues to do with health a huge political factor, you know it had actually never happened before. When have you ever heard nurses rise up against a government on any day? In any case, what did they offer? You know, Mr. Kwame Sapon is a fantastic health practitioner.
Well, nurses have had issues with their allowances, and
the story hasn't changed. Look, we have 34 million people. We have a country that is dependent, even still needs budgetary support. You understand? There's also competing interests on every budgetary allocation that we have. But remember that between education and health, they still get the largest chunk of a budget any day, at least under the NDC administration. That is not in doubt. Secondly, if we're talking about capping and not capping, look, I personally, and this is my very personal perspective, believe that we need to reduce bureaucracy and red tape. It doesn't help. Apart from that, when Mr. Mahama even said that they were going to actually take off these allowances to ensure that health facilities trained more, what happened? They took it from a very partisan perspective. In any case, how much was the...
But the nurses did want their allowances.
Yes, but how much were they giving them? Think about it. Look, if we build decent jobs in our country, and I was happy. I went to a shop yesterday and met a guy who works at the Kolobu Teaching Hospital. He actually manages the lift. And he works there in the evenings
I've seen him at the Greater Accra Regional Hospital.
Exactly. You understand? If we can create these environments with the 24-hour economy, for example, individuals will no longer need 400 as research allowance or 400 cedis as nursing allowance. But we will train them for better salaries, better incomes. Because you see, in every facet of professional training, if you are an expert, you will certainly do better. Even those who leave, as they call it, to jackpot to other countries, those who are experts do very well. Look, today, one of the biggest gaps we have is in facilities for aging populations. Our aged need special nurses who know how to handle them, because at a certain age, they are all suffering from a certain type of dementia. And you need people who are trained to understand the psychology of these people. There can be nothing more than building a great health facility for our people. All of us at some point will need a certain assistance. If capping it is what is preventing us from training more, then of course the cap should be removed. But as I said, this is a debate that we have not actually had. It's not a conversation that I have been privy to. I also don't understand what goes on in that particular sector. What I do know is that we must, and Mr. Mahama has always demonstrated his interest in building better health infrastructure. And of course, that will also require the quality of people who work in these facilities. So there can be no doubt.
So they can work hand in glove.
I have a funny story to share. People from Rwanda came here to understudy our health insurance system. They run it better than we do. They don't have health insurance, large buildings across the country. No. You see, there is a conversation that because now they have totally destroyed and left just the bone or the carcass, they no longer want to have. Do you remember the debate about procurement and single source procurement and how they were going to end all those types of procurements? When was the last time you heard anybody talk about procurement or procurement facilities in this country? These are some of the bottlenecks that we must remove. They have capped the GET fund. So there are student accommodations now that are sitting there with no money to finish. They have capped the energy sector levy. So there is the same thing happening, and the reason why we were struggling even to pay the independent power producers. People are worried about the sanctity of agreements, country to country, bilateral agreements and all that. Recently you heard the Auditor General speak about condoms for public use that have been stolen.
Right.
Daylight robbery and
over
theft.
3 million of them.
Exactly. How is that possible? It's mind-boggling. When was the last time you heard a campaign about HIV, for example? May God bless her. Madame Lodina was very interested in HIV. Did a lot of work in and around stigmatization in education for HIV and all that. When was the last time? Do you even know who occupies that seat now? Since Dr. Ella Das left. You see, look, we were very
the
big.
Ghana AIDS Commission has been on some
drives.
They have come
because
here
of enormous pressure, and I know they don't even have funding. I heard them when they were on your show. They were on your platform, for example. Look, have you seen the growth rate recently? This is from the Ghana Statistical Service. I didn't put it out.
I have seen them.
Exactly. So look, my brother, I say on every key facet, and I always say, look, Mr. Kwame Sapon-Sedu, he's a guy that I banter a lot with on social media. Doctor, yes. Right. Oh, don't worry. I mean, you know, so these titles a good hobby.
I know. I'm just because I know that.
I know he doesn't mind. He's my very good friend. I mean, we had a lot of debates in the past. Today, ask him. Is he happy with what he has experienced? But
something he says, which you've still not answered. He is saying that this money you are capping, it's not your money.
No.
And so it is like it should be factored into our loans and paid back.
The money is not even lying down for you to factor in and pay back. That's what I'm telling him. Most of those monies have been spent on wasteful projects, on sweetheart deals, on cronyism, on nepotism. Those monies are not there. But if he is interested, let him send us a paper, a recommendation on the way forward. That is welcome, and that is where we are. The listening tour is all about people sharing their views. I follow him very closely, and I read everything that he shares about health, and I know that he means very, very well, and he lives somewhere that he can see what people do to improve on their health facilities. Why not Ghana? You know, everything is leadership, my brother. Everything is leadership, genuine leadership, honest leadership.
The economy, we've already started talking about. I mean, I feel sometimes that it would be like flogging a dead horse, because everything that has happened has already happened, and we know the state of affairs. But some people have also sounded a note of caution to the NDC. You know, whoever takes over power in 2025 is going to have a huge problem with Ghana's economy. It's not going to be an easy ride. And Ghanaians are not very patient right now. What is the NDC going to do in the first 6 months to 1 year to turn the tide? As the former president has said, he wants to reset, you know, the nation, the economy, and all of that. Is it the 24-hour economy? How will you do that? Because if you look at all the metrics, analysts in there will say, look, this is not something that you can just, by the wave of a magic wand, say some abracadabra and it's done. What is the position of the NDC on that?
My brother, first things first. As soon as Mr. Mahama is sworn into office, and one of the first things will be what? Cut government expenditure, cut waste, reduce the size of government, cut down all the bureaucratic offices that have been created, filled with family and friends.
Like which ones?
Check Ghana Gas, the number of people they have. The Ministry of Transport now has 3 different ministries, some with 2 or 3 deputies. What are they all doing? The local government ministry. We are paying a 1% sanitation tax. Look at the environment in which we live.
Are we going to have ministers of state as in at the presidency? You know those arrangements. Are we going to have them? If Mr.
Mahama is going to run a lean government, we must be sure that we drive more efficiency than number of persons who are going to be in government. And I will personally, he says he would run a lean government with 60 ministers. I think that works. And he did it before. In any case, like I said, what is this large amorphous government? Over 120 ministers. They are a drain even on the non-existent economy. Why do you think that Mr. Akufo-Addo has lost control? That he can no longer even control the persons who are stealing and selling also things to themselves? It's because there are just too many people. It's a human institution, my brother. You can't be everywhere at the same time. The Office of Special Prosecutor, how have they fared? Look, just make a list of the allegations currently of graft, of stealing, of corruption. Imagine if all those monies could be recovered, even half of those monies. Can you imagine what they would do for poverty alleviation, for health infrastructure? The 339 million that is sitting in that pit called the National Cathedral can upgrade Kolebu to the level of UGMC. And I think that this is what we want to see. Look, we can start off by consolidating a lot of these ministries. What is it they do? Jenny, what they do? Imagine having this huge amorphous infrastructure and everybody draining the same taxpayer. How do you think Ghanaians are faring? I think that if we can fight corruption even up to 40% off, why not? We will be saving huge sums of money. We can build additional facilities for our students. We can build additional health infrastructure. We can improve upon the national health insurance. Look, more people are getting rich from the national health insurance than the persons who need health. go to most of these hospitals. When you even take the card and show them, they tell you they're not going to allow you to get treatment because you are holding a national health insurance card. These are the challenges that ordinary Ghanaians, look, those who will never see Jubilee House, who will never sit in a convoy, who will never receive free fuel coupons. This is the reality of our story. And if Mr. Mahama can come into office and reduce poverty even by half and develop an equitable system where everybody gets something to do, no matter how small, not just a few. You know, there's something we don't reference often, that social democracy is also at the level of human development. That you build health infrastructure, school infrastructure. We were told that we didn't eat roads. Have you forgotten? At the peak of that 2016 campaign. So why are we now going around and making noise about roads and saying that we are stealing all your money? We have wasted on PDS, we have wasted on the National Cathedral. But don't worry about it. At least we are going to do a road here for you. Why should we even take such conversations? This is just disrespect. You know, if we can even fix a few of the things that matter, health infrastructure, additional facilities, train more nurses and doctors to man them, create job opportunities for our people. The 24-hour economy is a process. It will feed into the underemployment. Look, there's nothing worse than underemployment. You've seen NAPCO people contesting how much they're being paid. You've seen National Service for Exam. Today, what do we hear? Look, they are vote buying. They are trying very hard to cheat our intelligence. They are trying very hard to pay for our conscience. These are the things we must resist, and resist oppressors' rule. We must tell President Akufo-Addo that Ghana is not his heirloom. It is not for his family. It is not his property. He does not dictate to us what we want. He tells us how he's, and we tell him that we are not pleased with the service so far. So he should go home and not impose or foist his vice president on us. In any case, he assured us that the choice of running mate was largely because he was coming to deliver us and deliver a better economy. Right. He has failed to deliver a better economy. He has no business coming to foist his vice president on us and even telling us that that is the only person who would what? Uphold his legacy.
We have to take another quick break. We'll be right back as we have this conversation with Joyce Bawah Slams Pres. We take a spin, we'll be back. Stay. Okay, so we're back on the AM show as we cap off the conversation with Joyce Bawah Slams Pres, who speaks for former President John Dramani Mahama. We've had quite a lot to talk about. It's been an exhaustive conversation. But before we go, I'd like us to address these three issues, starting with a manifesto. It's what, 6 months, 5 months to the election. We've still not seen manifestos from the two major political parties. And for some, that's a cause for worry. 24-hour economy, what will the manifesto say? Health, what will the manifesto say? When are we getting a manifesto from the NDC?
Well, you know that, Benjamin, we have actually decided to go and launch the campaign in Tamale on Saturday the 27th. So after that, certainly we'll be working towards a manifesto launch probably by mid-August, really. But of course, over the months,
is that not a bit too late for a party that is seeking to get itself back into power, that is seeking to convince the people? Shouldn't your manifesto be out by now?
My brother, the reality on the hands is that Ghanaians want change. There's a huge clamor for something different. They want experience. They want a genuine pair of hands that is going to come and at least fight corruption more than what we are seeing. People know what they want beyond even a manifesto. You see, the manifesto usually is a whole razzmatazz for us who want to sit and vet these things, etc. When Mr. Mahama spoke about the constitutional amendment process, you saw the reaction. When he spoke about ex gratia in particular, you saw the reaction. When he spoke about how he'll cut the size of government alone, you saw the reaction. When he spoke about the fact that he was going to introduce a 24-hour economy, look, it is something we have never tried before. When I was working in the Premier Towers, at the time we had GCNet. They had 3 shifts. When Busy Internet was down the road on the Ringway Estate Road, you remember? When the trade fair was working, how many of us didn't have jobs out of school? Look, there is something that has happened even over our short lifetime that we always forget. People want decent opportunities to make a living. Have you heard how much landlords are charging for rent, for example? And yet look at the opulence of those in power.
We pay so we know.
Thank you. And so you understand, look at the amount we are paying as school fees. Look at the money that we expend on transportation alone. When was the last time you saw even a metro bus on any of our streets? Look at what is going on at STC, for example. You know, my brother, I'm not speaking because I am NDC. I'm speaking because I am a Ghanaian citizen. That beyond the manifesto launch, there are things Mr. Mahama has promised to do, and the assurance is that first and foremost, we will cut all these sweetheart deals. Why? You heard the Ghana Institution of Architects, for example. One individual architect has taken billions of cedis for work that we haven't even seen.
Okay. So clarity there, at least by mid-August, we get a manifesto.
Get a formal manifesto. But
from the NDC.
Absolutely. But in the process, I believe that he has... Look, you've talked about capping of all these NHIAs and what. Even the district assembly common fund has been capped. Get fund, ESLA. They took away the road tolls just like that by a minister walking into parliament. Look at how COVID funds were wasted, and your minister told you that he had no idea what happened with those monies. We've been demanding accountability, even an agreement between them and whoever provided the services. Till date, have you seen it? If Mr. Mahama even just starts a process of accountability and investigations alone and recovering some of these monies that they have stolen, I'm sure the good people of Ghana will be pleased.
There are two final points I wanted to run by you. First, that research or survey by Fitch that puts you, your party, in a better stead in the 2024 presidential elections, and the bit about billboards that have been pulled down belonging to the NDC, some of them defaced and all of that. But this just came to mind, and I want a quick response on it so you can get to the two other issues. President Mahama, former President Mahama, going to Russia, and what was said about his getting funds from the Russians and all of that. I want you to clarify for our viewers what exactly it is.
Benjamin, I mean, look, Mr. Mahama is almost like a very iconic figure. Where would he go to in this world that people wouldn't know? And there was a communication months ahead that his book was being translated into Russian language, for example. And so he'll be going there for the official...
Which one, My First Coup d'etat?
Absolutely. He studied in Russia. He has many classmates there. You know how it is for all of us who studied in many jurisdictions.
But the claim, I just want you to
but that is definitely
talk about the claim.
When they went
because you know what our constitution says about funding political party campaigns.
Please, and the same constitution tells you that we must be transparent and accountable. The people who are speaking, how have they been accountable and transparent? When they went to Serbia and brought those people into the country, did we not protest? What did they say? Have you seen anybody accompanying Mr. Mahama back into the country from Moscow?
Okay,
or that you've heard
in effect, it's not true.
Absolutely cannot be true. That's preposterous.
Right. So just to wrap the conversation, we have to go. Fitch puts your party in a good stead. How does that make the NDC feel? Are you resting on your oars? And the billboards that were taken down, defaced, what are going to be your reactions in Tema and other places?
Let me state something very, very beautifully. We are not leaving any stone unturned. We know that on any race, we are the underdogs. We don't have all the stolen monies on us. We don't have all the corruption money that they have. We don't have all the looting brigades that they have. In fact, on this occasion, we have God and the good people of Ghana on our side, and truth stands with us.
Okay.
So that is all that we have going into this election. Above all, we have a pair of trusted individuals who will be leading us and steering us out of bankruptcy. Remember that everybody now knows that this administration cannot deliver us from this hardship, from poverty. They promise all sorts of things they have not been able to deliver. In any case,
but are you encouraged? Are you encouraged by what Fitch has said?
You know, look, you see, me, I keep saying one thing.
Just very briefly, because
research is just purely serves as a guide. So we welcome all these conversations, and it's not in doubt that we are working very, very hard to convince the good people of Ghana to stay with us.
Okay, on the billboards.
On the billboards, very unfortunate, very regrettable, but of course that has been the attitude of the New Patriotic Party. Ever since Akufo-Addo started to lead this group of them, this has been the trajectory. And you heard Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo. I am not a founding member of the NPP, but we've heard their founding members talk about how people like Alajete will be turning in their graves, that this is the party that they work to build with their hard-earned money. So we all know that this is not the sort of NPP that anybody envisaged. So if they pull down billboards, if they try to destroy and attack Mr. Mahama and everybody in the NDC, it's very normal behavior.
At the statement you put out, it said that it sounded almost like a threat. If you go on like this, we'll also make our party members. That's where
I keep telling you something, that the nature of a leader determines how the followers behave.
Okay.
Mr. Akufo-Addo's whole posturing is the reason why the NPP people are behaving with such impunity, to quote Dr. Tony Edu. And that impunity must end.
Okay. This is where we cap off the conversation. Joyce Bawah Slams President, a lawyer, a spokesperson for former President John Dramani Mahama, It's been an exhaustive conversation on myriad issues. We're grateful to you for your patience, for staying with us today and for watching this conversation. My name is Benjamin Akafo. Thank you for watching.